Welcome to Season 6 of the Excel Still More podcast. I am your host, Chris Emerson, and I am here to encourage you in your walk with the Lord, and I'm glad you've joined. Our program continues to be sponsored by Cunningham Financial Group. John is a good friend, and he's helped me and my family in everything from stock and mutual fund investing to annuities, life insurance, and retirement planning. I certainly commend him to you. If you have needs in any of those areas, you can reach him at 205-326-7364. Thank you again for your ongoing encouragement and support. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back to part 2 of our short series from Dale Carnegie's 1930s masterpiece, How to Win Friends and Influence People. We did a pretty lengthy ramp up into it from last week's episode, and that will not be the case today. We will draw from a section in the book that lists 6 ways to make people like you, and they are tremendous, and we need to give them ample time. So just a quick recap of the 3 main ideas from last week, which will be built on today, and then we will move forward. This book is designed to help you create more closer inner circle friends and to have greater, more productive influence on those who are not yet in that friend circle. And we're just talking about all of the people you meet in the different stages of your life. His first lesson was this: if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Leading to principle number 1, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Have you worked on that this week? It demands a lot of impulse control so that you can replace that behavior with better things. One of those better things is called the big secret of dealing with people: give honest and sincere appreciation. I hope you found that helpful to people that you really love who just need to hear you show it, and also to people where you do not have yet that love developed, but by finding something positive to say or some sincere compliment to share, you can certainly get things moving in the right direction. And then number 3, he says, he who can do this has the whole world with him. He who cannot walks a lonely way. Principle number 3, arouse in the other person an eager want. Now, that is a really cool concept that needs exploration, and the good news is part of this list of 6 you're about to hear will help with that. But when you can connect what you want with what they want and move them in your direction through their own inclinations, you can accomplish almost anything. So that was the starting point. I've loved this book for about 15 years since Bill Murph, who's passed away, recommended it to me. I already made some substantial adjustments last week, and maybe you did too. But these 6 follow-up things about making people like you will add some nice specificity to it. I want to say something about that title of this section before we get into this. This is not, as we said before, a manipulation. This isn't about convincing people to like you so that you'll have some personal value. I think of it more in terms of the way Paul opens his letters to Timothy, where he talks about grace and mercy and peace in the Lord Jesus Christ. For those of us who belong to the Lord, who truly are in a relationship with Jesus, we have lives that are filled with grace. That is, blessings flow into our lives that we don't deserve. We have lives that are defined by mercy. That is, consequences and punishments are held back from us that we do deserve. And in that space where grace flows in and mercy holds back things, there is this place of abiding, incredible, life-defining peace. And if you are in that space, then you ought to want to invite other people into it with you. But they're going to have to enjoy and be drawn to you in order to be in that space with you. We want to share what it means to rest in the arms of the Lord. And that means being someone who draws people close instead of pushing them away. Our 6 ideas start with this. Number 1, do this and you will be welcome anywhere. Become genuinely interested in other people. Now, I know that may take some focus and self-discipline on the part of some, but it is our mission in life to be interested in others so that where we are in the Lord can be true for them. We are supposed to be a people who are not defined by what we get, and we don't gauge every experience by our personal benefit. We're not demanding that people be interested in us and what we want as if the world revolved around us. But instead, we learn to direct that attention to others for their good. I love how this chapter opens up by talking about man's best friend. Do you have a dog, or have you ever had a dog that you loved? What would happen when you got home from work or school? This dog would come at you like it was the first time they'd ever seen you and you were a big old ice cream cone. I'm sure the dog has self-interest here and wants to be loved and wants to be with you, but the way that he expresses it is by genuine, over-the-top, exuberant interest in you, in being seen by you, and in interacting with you. And in that moment, you don't even care why the dog is behaving this way. You're just reacting to something that wants to be near you by reciprocating that same kind of affection. In this chapter, Carnegie says a couple of times this same idea. You should learn and know by divine instinct that you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming genuinely interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. The default reality for most humans is that they are first and usually interested in themselves. Their pronouns tell the story, their conversations, and most of what they engage in life. And we have that self-focus in us as well. I like how he's writing this book in the 1930s, and he talks about photographs. When you see a group photograph that you are in, whose picture do you look at first? And this isn't an indictment of people. It's just the truth about all of the people around you, some of whom you want to draw close, and most of whom you want to have an influence on. Carnegie goes on to say, it is the individual who is not interested in his fellow men who has the greatest difficulties in life and provides the greatest injury to others. It is from among such individuals that all human failures spring. I appreciate that he's turning up the intensity on this conversation by saying, if I can't learn to be interested in what's going on with others for some purpose greater than myself, then I'm destined for some form of pain for myself and others. There are a couple of really cute little examples in this chapter. A magician who, before he walks out on the stage, repeats over and over, I love my audience. I love them. And it changes the way he presents his tricks. There's a great story about a salesman who was trying to sell bread to a hotel, and the manager told him no. But this guy had this habit when he would go in of greeting everyone, the bellhop, the cashier, all of the workers. And he went back after being rejected several hours later, and when he walked in, the owner's demeanor had changed. He invited him into a meeting, and he ended up buying from him. And he said, why did you change your mind? And he said, it was the bellhop who came up to me after you left and mentioned how much interest you had taken in him. And I thought, if this guy cares about all of the employees here, then this is someone I want to work with. What I'm telling you is that's the kind of reaction people have that benefits, you, but also everyone. A cool little tip in this chapter is Carnegie always tried to find and write down people's birthdays, and then when that would come around, he would send a telegram or a letter. I think that is a tremendous way to show interest in others. At the Lindale Church, we get an email each Saturday morning at 9:15 a.m., and it lays out all of the birthdays for the week. And I go ahead and go in my journal and write their names on that corresponding day for the week so that when I wake up that morning, I will remember to send them a text. Genuine interest builds connections. And of course, remember that our greatest example is Jesus. He had a genuine interest in you. He came here to address your problem by sacrificing himself, and now we love him because he first loved us. Okay, number 2, a simple one. In fact, he calls it a simple way to make a good first impression, and he sums it up in one word: smile. Faces say more than clothes or anything else. A smile says, I like you. You make me happy, and I'm glad to see you. Here are a couple of things he says about that in the chapter. An insincere grin? No, that doesn't fool anybody. We know it's mechanical and we resent it. I'm talking about a real smile, a heartwarming smile, a smile that comes from within. He goes on from there to express these sentiments. People who smile tend to manage, teach, and sell more effectively, and to raise happier children. There's far more information in a smile than a frown. That's why encouragement is a much more effective teaching device than punishment. Look, I don't know how to emphasize this enough, but if there is any joy found in your heart, and there ought to be in so many ways, bring a smile into the room. Smiles just change people. He told a story about a bunch of people sitting in a vet's office and no one is smiling while they wait, and then in comes a woman with a 9-month-old baby and a kitten. And before you know it, the whole room is smiling, and then they're talking and there's joy because of a baby's grin and a cute little pet. There's this great line where he says, people rarely succeed at anything unless they have fun doing it. In other words, finding the joy in what you're doing will invite other people to come and do it. This immediately makes me think of worship services, standing in the foyer, sitting in praise. I've told this dumb joke 100 times from the pulpit about a little girl who saw a donkey and asked her mom if that donkey was a Christian. And the mom was like, "Why would you ask that?" And she said, "Because he's got such a long face." That joke is not funny, but it is saying something that a lot of people need to hear. Now, you might be like, I'm not one of those people. I'm just not a smiler or an expressive person. And I would say to you that if everything you hope to accomplish in life is just done by you and contained in you, then don't worry about it. But if your greatest success in work or worship or family is designed to involve other people and share what is good and draw them to what is great, then take the number one piece of advice listed in this chapter. Force yourself to smile. Okay, let's move this to number 3. So I'm genuinely interested in you and I have a smile on my face. Number 3, if you don't do this, you're headed for trouble. Learn people's names. I don't know about you. This is tremendously difficult for me, so I have a lot of helps in place. But Carnegie says, quote, "Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language." What he's saying is there is nothing more honorable or kind or inviting that you can do than to remember someone's name and use it often. I've known preachers in my life who were excellent at this. If you were a first-time visitor where D. Bowman was preaching, he would come up to you and ask you your name, and then he would say it back to you once or twice. He might even ask how you spell it. He would call his wife over and say your name to her, and by that point, he had you locked in. He would then address you by name after services on your way out, and you instantly felt like you had a new friend. Some people have special abilities on this. Max Dawson is a preacher friend. I watched him at a youth event once go around the room Sunday morning and Sunday night and ask young people's names. And I don't know if he wrote them down somewhere or how he learned it, but I was at the Devotional later that night, Sunday night, and he started by going around the room, pointing and naming every young person in the place. And let me ask you, do you think that changed the way they related to him and listened? You know that it did. To add a little pressure, Carnegie writes, "Remember that name and call it easily, and you have paid a subtle and very effective compliment. But forget it or misspell it, and you have placed yourself at a sharp disadvantage." Now look, each person may have to approach that differently. The best thing I've learned to do is carry a little notepad and pencil when I'm in public and make sure I write it down as quickly as I can, or take a picture if I see it written on a card somewhere so I can get to it quickly later. There are a handful of great success stories in this chapter about people who turn things around by relating to others in a more personal way. The chapter ends with this exhortation. We should be aware of the magic contained in a name and realize that this single item is wholly and completely owned by the person with whom we are dealing and nobody else. The name sets the individual apart. It makes him or her unique among all others. The information we are imparting or the request we are making takes on a special importance when we approach the situation with the name of the individual. From the waitress to the senior executive, the name will work magic as we deal with others. Okay, let's quickly build in a fourth thing. I'm genuinely interested in you, I'm smiling, and I have learned and recall your name. Then comes number 4, an easy way to become a great conversationalist. Be a good listener. Encourage people to talk about themselves. I know I've mentioned this before, but I've got some friends who are amazing at this. Scott Murph, I know I've said his name in this context in years past, and while he's not the only one who does this, he's the one I try to emulate the most. He is going to ask about you and ask follow-up questions and really try to let you share what matters to you before he volunteers his own ideas. In fact, he and others are willing to just keep going until you finally realize that you should share attention and hear from him as well. But once others do that, he has their ear. He's earned it. Being a good listener is an incredible tool in building better relationships, but there are some things that have to be in place for it to matter. You must care about that person and be genuinely interested in them because this could take some time to develop. You listen, you ask questions, you get to know them. They may get caught up in this and go on, and that may frustrate you. You're standing there like, I've got some things to say too. Why don't you ask me a question? But it is still the course to take when you can for a couple of reasons. One, even if they talk the whole time, you are showing them something good and you are building rapport with them. And two, there will ultimately come a point of recognition, maybe not that day, maybe 2 weeks from now, where they say, you know what, I need to actually be asking about you, and they're much more inclined to listen. I need to move on to the last two things, but I just have to say something as a preacher here. One of the most agonizing moments of my week, almost every week, is when I'm talking to someone at church and they are pouring out their bucket and I want to listen, I really do, but over their shoulder I see a visitor that no one is talking to, or a member who's been going through a hard time standing by themselves. And I'm standing there trying to be a good listener, but in my mind I'm going, I can't listen, I need to deal with that, and I just try to get out of the conversation and I end up being rude sometimes. So as a preacher, let me make an appeal to you if you are a church goer. I'm going to work on that and try to stay focused, but could you do me a favor? If you see a visitor in church standing by themselves, or anyone for that matter, on their own, would you please go and engage them in conversation? That way maybe I can stay focused on the story I'm being told. And if you're going, oh, that's not my thing, I don't know, I would say, number one, be genuinely interested in that person's needs. Number two, put a smile on your face. Number three, ask their name or just open with it. And number four, just be a good listener. And one final thought on that from the end of the chapter: if you aspire to be a good conversationalist, be an active listener. To be interesting, be interested. Ask questions that other persons will enjoy answering. Encourage them to talk about themselves and their accomplishments. From there, we lead into point number 5, how to interest people. Talk in terms of the other person's interest. So at this point in a conversation, it's your turn to talk. And you could do the me bubble thing where they talk about what's important to them, and then you talk about what's important to you that has nothing to do with them. And look, among good friends, that's a great way to talk. I listen to you, you listen to me, and we appreciate each other. But if I am trying to influence you in some way, just talking about something that matters to me that doesn't matter to you is not going to move the needle at all. Think about great interviewers. They'll listen to music or read books before they have the person on. Wes McAdams is really good at this when he interviews preachers over spiritual topics. When he had me on the program to talk about grace, he went and listened to my sermons on grace. And so he spoke about something we were both interested in, and he was able to do it by speaking to my interest in the topic and things that I had said about it. From that point, he allowed me to express myself, and then anything on the topic he wanted to add, well, he had my full appreciation and attention. There are several stories in the chapter about someone who wanted something from someone else, but instead of just approaching them and asking, they learned some things about them and what they were passionate about, and they opened by talking about those things, by inquiring and sharing in those things. And then by the time they got to a request, the entire tone of the room was set towards companionship and agreement, and things went well. By the way, this is a great way to discover new friendships. If I like talking about your interests and hearing you talk about them, and you do the same and they begin to connect, just the process of discovering and exploring those things and making those connections begin to define, or in some cases, redefine a relationship. And hey, at the very least, if nothing comes out of it that day, you build rapport that you can use later, and you're destined to learn something about some interest outside of your own. And then lastly, number 6, and kind of something that encapsulates all of it, how to make people like you instantly. Make the other person feel important, sincerely. This may put us a minute or two over today, but I just have to tell you, there's this really cool part early in this chapter where he was in a bank and decided that I'm going to try to make that clerk like me. Obviously, he says to make him like me, I must say something nice, not about myself, but about him. So I ask myself, what is there about him that I can honestly admire? He said, I then approached him and said, I certainly wish I had your head of hair. He looked up, half startled, his face beaming with smiles, and they went on to have this great conversation and become friends. He puts in the book, I told this story once in public, and a man asked me afterwards, what did you want to get out of him? And Carnegie was like, what do you mean, what was I trying to get out of him? If we are so selfish that we can't radiate a little happiness and pass on a bit of honest appreciation without trying to get something out of the other person in return, if our souls are no bigger than sour crab apples, we shall meet with the failure we so richly deserve. In other words, be nice to be nice. Because, like we talked about last week, people want to feel important. They want to feel like they matter. And me talking about me or me ignoring them, neither one of those things will help. Jesus probably cornered the market on good advice here when he said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you want to be complimented or appreciated or sincerely seen as valuable, then do so to others. And just a couple of final thoughts on this. These concepts are most needed where there's a new relationship that needs some grounding or where there's been trouble in that relationship and there needs to be some rebuilding. And I'll tell you, no matter who they are, they're worth the effort and it's worth it to be kind, just like the Lord has been and is with us. One last thought on this as we wrap up. Most people in your life either think very highly of themselves or very lowly of themselves. By speaking towards their interest and passing on complimentary language to them, if they fit in the first category, you are giving them what they crave and there will be a good response towards you. But if they're in that second category, thinking lowly of themselves, as very many people are, well, God needs to send someone into their lives to tell them how worthwhile and amazing they are. And today, that person is you. And if that's the way you see your mission, God will use you greatly as you go about winning friends and influencing people. Thank you for joining us today. If you found value in this episode, consider sharing it with a friend. And speaking of friends, if you have any mortgage-related needs, whether you're a first-time home buyer, exploring refinancing options, or dreaming of future home ownership goals, reach out to Tyler Cain. He's a senior loan officer at Statewide Mortgage. This company is founded by a fellow believer in Louisville, Kentucky, and is dedicated to helping families achieve their dreams of home ownership. Tyler offers 20 years of expertise and dedication to guide you through every step of the process. You can find Tyler's website link in our show notes or contact him directly at 813-380-8487. And always remember, whatever you do in the name of Jesus Christ, excel still more.